Welcome to The Explainer. Every single day, countries are making massive, completely invisible trade-offs. Today, we're going to decode the exact mathematical map they use to decide what it takes to survive today and what it takes to grow for tomorrow. So it all really kicks off with one core question. How on earth does a country decide what to build when it is physically impossible to have it all? Because let's face it, we live in a world of absolute scarcity. There's only so much land, so much labor, so many machines, and so much time to go around. You simply cannot produce infinite food, infinite housing, and infinite technology. When a nation decides it wants more of one thing, it is forced to make a really hard pivot. Let's pull this into the real world for a second. Take a look at Nigeria's rapid economic shift. Back in 2012, Africa's largest economy was heavily leaning on agriculture and oil. But when global crises hit, the government had to pivot, and pivot hard. By 2018, the services sector absolutely exploded, taking over more than half of the entire economy. But here's the catch. That growth required a massive sacrifice. Agriculture was slashed almost in half. Resources literally had to be pulled away from the fields just to fuel those new offices and factories. To actually map out these massive, nation-shifting trade-offs, economists use a brilliantly simple tool. Think of it as a decoder ring for the whole economy. It's called the Production Possibility Curve, or the PPC. It's a model that shows you the absolute maximum amount of goods a country can produce if, and only if, it perfectly and efficiently uses every single resource it has at its disposal. All right, picture a hypothetical country. They'd take every single worker, every factory, every piece of raw material, and split them between producing just two things: cars and televisions. If they throw absolutely everything into cars, they max out at 1,000 cars, but 0 TVs. If they flip the script entirely to TVs, they hit 2,000, but 0 cars. Anywhere sitting exactly on that boundary curve represents perfect maximum efficiency. But you know the real story? It actually happens off that line. Look at point C, sitting way inside the curve. If an economy is producing there, it means factories are just gathering dust. It is horribly inefficient. Then, look at point D, floating way out there in the top right. That is pure fantasy. It is physically impossible to reach point D with our current resources. It's the ultimate visual for economic scarcity. So what actually happens when a nation decides to mix things up and shift priorities? Let's say, starting out at point A, the country is happily churning out 680 cars and 1,200 televisions. But suddenly, trends change. People want more TVs. The whole economy has to physically slide down that boundary to hit point B. By making that strategic pivot down to point B, well, they pull it off. The economy successfully pumps out exactly 300 more televisions for its citizens to enjoy. But right here is the absolute casualty of that choice. To get those 300 extra TVs, car production has to drop from 680 down to 480. Yep, 200 cars must absolutely die on the assembly line to make this happen. They will never be built. It mathematically proves that you just can't have your cake and eat it too. This exact tension is what we call opportunity cost. It's literally the amount of one good you have to give up to get more of another. You see, the true price tag on those 300 new televisions wasn't just cash or labor. The true opportunity cost was those 200 abandoned cars. The benefit you sacrifice becomes your ultimate cost. And this brings us to a super fascinating layer of the model. The actual shape of this boundary tells a story about how painful these trade-offs really are. Opportunity cost basically takes one of two forms: constant, which gives us a straight line, or increasing, which gives us that bowed-out curve. Let's look at the straight line first. A perfectly straight diagonal line means you've got constant opportunity cost. This only happens when resources are perfectly adaptable. Think about a factory making, running shoes and tennis shoes. The leather, the machines, the skills, they're practically identical. If you stop making one pair of running shoes, you gain exactly one pair of tennis shoes. It's a straight, one-to-one swap every single step of the way. But here's the thing. Massive economies almost never operate on a straight line. They operate on a curve, representing increasing opportunity cost. Why? Because real-world resources are incredibly specialized. You can't just take a massive robotic arm designed to weld car frames and tell it to assemble delicate flat-screen TVs. As you push your economy to the extremes, you start forcing heavy metal welders to build microchips, and they're going to be terrible at it. So giving up cars yields fewer and fewer televisions in return. Now, up to this point, we've kind of treated this boundary like a fixed cage you can't escape. But the coolest part of economics is that countries can actually break out.
An economy can literally push its boundaries outward by bringing in more labor, building new factories, fostering better business, or the ultimate game changer, inventing new technology.
Let's visualize what a tech boom looks like. Imagine our TV manufacturers suddenly invent a hyper-efficient way to make widescreen panels. Worker productivity just absolutely skyrockets. Notice how the entire curve pivots outward? Car production capacity stays exactly the same, but the maximum TV production surges from 2,000 up to 3,000. A single efficiency boost literally changes the rules of the game. To see this in action, just look at Qatar. When they needed to massively expand their infrastructure and construction capacity, they hit a wall. They hit the limits of their internal production possibility curve. There just wasn't enough internal workforce to build at that scale. So what did they do? They systematically shifted their entire boundary outward by bringing in hundreds of thousands of skilled migrant workers, largely from low-income economies in Asia. They literally imported the labor they needed to fundamentally redraw their own economic boundaries. Which brings us to a pretty harsh global reality. High-income nations, they boast these staggering skylines and abundant top-tier resources. Their curves are massive and expansive. But for low-income economies, it's a completely different story. They face severe resource scarcity, meaning their economic boundaries are tight, restrictive, and honestly, pretty unforgiving. And because those curves are so tight, these low-income countries face an agonizing, almost impossible choice. It's called the low-income dilemma. They basically have to choose between consumer goods, like basic food, clothing, and medicine just to keep people surviving today, and capital goods, like tractors and schools needed to actually thrive tomorrow. If they pour all their limited resources into just surviving today, they leave almost nothing to invest in the capital goods required for long-term growth. They become trapped on a curve that never shifts outward. So, as you can see, the production possibility curve isn't just some abstract chart. It's literally the mathematical heartbeat of human progress and human sacrifice. It proves that every single choice has a hidden casualty. So, I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. If you are managing an entire nation's incredibly limited resources, knowing that every hospital you build might mean fewer homes or every factory means less food, what would you choose to sacrifice today to build a better tomorrow? Keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.